kind of similar, 2007, 26 pages. Their mission statement, this is a direct extract of a clip from their actual plan. Here's their mission statement. The Employment Development Department promotes California's economics goals in providing services to employees, following federal and state laws with fairness and fiscal integrity to operate the unemployment service, the disability insurance program, yada, 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 yada. Right? Again, all good stuff. But this isn't a mission statement. That's a list of their services. That's their service portfolio. Right? And so let's take that out because that's dynamic and ever changing. Right? Let's talk about who and why and really simplify this down. So fast forward to 2017, they're right on the verge. I think they may have actually released it, but it was coming out as I was preparing for this. It's 2 pages also. All right? Their mission is EDD enhances California's economic growth and prosperity. And a key strategic challenge they were having is how do we operate, again, in a more cross-functional fashion. So by collaboratively delivering our services to meet the evolving needs of our employers, customers, and the workforce, because they recognized that the client was changing, so we also need to be changing. All right, so just a little bit simpler kind of way of approaching it. So what's the technique so that you could facilitate this with 24 some odd people and not be using the killing me smalls method? All right, would you guys like to see that technique? Is that something you came for? All right, so I'm gonna go through this. It'll be recorded. If you missed something, make sure you check out the video as well, but I wanna make sure you get this. But this, we call this the ROUS method, which refers to another movie, which is The Princess Bride. And The Princess Bride, The Princess Bride, there's a scene where Buttercup and Wesley, they're running from the bad guys, right? They're in the fire swamp, and they've conquered 2 of the challenges of the fire swamp, and then there's 1 challenge left, and Buttercup asks them, what about the ROUSs? And Wesley says, you mean the rapidly organizational unit statement creatures? Actually, he says the rodents of unusual size. That's actually the line from the movie, right? But he says, I don't believe they exist. And we kind of keyed off of that because nobody believed that you could take 120 people and in 45 minutes get a customer-focused, concise, compelling, and clear mission vision statement out of them. All right, but using the ROUS method, we've done this dozens and dozens of times. So what is the method? Let's say you've got 24 folks, and we're strong advocates that when you're creating your strategies, it's not just the top level leaders of your unit, that you include the next generation in that conversation as well. This is as much training and development and operation for them to be involved in the co-creation of this as you can. Right? Usually the reason we don't have 24 people is because we facilitate it poorly. All right? But then let's not facilitate it poorly. So here's a way to facilitate 24 people coming up with a mission vision for your team. Step 1. You've got the individuals, and every single person takes a sheet of paper and they fold it into force, and then they write a draft with the instructions, right? Let's make sure that it's customer focused and it includes the why. Right, but you come up with whatever it is you want to come up with, right? And so everybody sketches something. You give them a couple minutes, right? Then you pass yours to your neighbor, and you receive one from a neighbor, right? And then I take let's say I received yours, then I write that on the second section, and I edit it. I'm like, okay, well, you use this word, I don't like that word, and yours was too short, I want to add more words, all right, and so on and so forth. So I now got a second version. Right, and then I take that and I pass it to somebody next, right? And then I get one from somebody else. And then this one's way too long. We need to shorten this. So every person is editing and revising, multiple rounds. 3 to 4 is kind of a typical process, right? And what's happening is you got 24 people in the room who are all talking, thinking, listening, debating, compromising, being creative, being critical simultaneously, and you can't even hear a pin drop. How does that compare to having your 2 loudmouths just go at it and let everybody else just kind of watch the show? Right? So massive parallel processing, and they're starting to hear and see different perspectives that are reflected in that group. Right? Once you've done a few rounds of that, then you take a couple of folks, right, and you pair them up. Right? And so we get together and we're looking at ours and like, what do you have and what do I have? And we take those and we make a baby out of it. Right? And we have a mission vision that comes out of that kind of incorporates the best of both of ours. And the 2 of you're getting together and you're taking your 2 versions and you're making a baby out of yours too, and there's a new version of that. Right? And then our 2 and your 2, we get together and we introduce, here's my kid, here's my kid, right? We marry them off, they get grandbabies in, right? And so you take that and now you got to foursome and you're merging that together, right? And you're like, okay, well you said that and I said, well you called the customer that and we called the customer this, let's debate. So there's debating and negotiating, and again, this is going on in parallel with multiple conversations at the same time, right? And then you keep doing that until then you got, 3 teams of 8 in this case, right? And so and then now we've got 3 versions. And we write those up on the wall. And what you'll find is those 3 versions will have a lot more in common than they will be different. right? Some will be wordy, some will be clever, some will be whatever, right? And then we use their old-fashioned grammar school technique where you do a sentence map. You guys remember that from like 4th grade, right? You take out and like, what's the subject, what's the verb, what are the adverbs and the adjectives, right? Well, we do that and we extract out, okay, what are the subjects in these 3 versions? What are the key action verbs? What are the key qualifiers? And the qualifiers are the, excellently, efficiently, effectively, wonderfully, talently, positively, all the lees in there, right? And all the adjectives, green and sustainable and integrated and yada, 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 all right? And so you separate those elements out, and then you ask the team to vote on them as separate elements, right? So we say, well, we've got CalPERS as one subject, we have defenders of the retirement system as another one, and then we just have we, all right? Those are the 3 options we have. Let's vote on it, right? Who liked just leading with the name of our team, right? And then some people raise their hand. Who liked defenders of the retirement system, right? They raise their hand. Who liked just keeping it short and simple with we, all right? And then you'll see predominantly kind of the will of your team be reflected in that. It's like, all right, we got 12 votes for defenders of the retirement system, right? That's what we're going with, all right? And so, again, they're the customer more than anything else of this mission statement. Like, it's got to work for them to get their feedback. Then you repeat it for the action verbs, and then you do it for the qualifiers. In the case of the qualifiers, what we like to do is if you've got, you might have 20 of them up there, right? We'd say, okay, then vote for your top 3. All right, so I really like sustainably, integrated, and compassionate. Those are my top 3, right? So we all vote out, and then again, you'll see 2 or 3 of them will kind of rise to the top. And then we take that, we string it together, and we take it out, and we test it with the rest of the employees if you're a large organization. If that's the whole organization, you're done right there. You just decide and you're done. But if you got, say, 200 or 300 or whatever, you take it out and you get their input on it, and they spit on it, and they choke on it, and they poke fun of it, and you make changes based on that, and then you bring it back to the leader. And the leader's there for a reason, right? You've got to make the call. You're not going to make everybody happy. You need to be bold. You need to be decisive. Based on the feedback and the will of the people, boom, this is who we are. This is who we serve. This is where we're going, right? And you've got yourself a mission statement. And I'm here to tell you, I've done this with engineers at Caltrans, right? Guys that, extroverted engineers. You know what an extroverted engineer is? An extroverted engineer is somebody who walks up and when they talk to you, they look at your shoes instead of theirs. Right, that's an extroverted engineer. Right, these guys were in cubes. They'd never actually humanly interfaced with some of the other folks that they worked with and their neighbors, for years, right? They would just send each other emails, right? And so I remember the manager of this team, right? I won't say who your name is, but you know who I'm talking about, right? The manager of this team pulled me. He's like, I don't know if this is going to work for them, man. They're not really into this kind of thing, right? And they just kind of like doing their engineering thing. And I was like, but why are they doing it? And who are they serving? And they got together, man, and in 30 minutes, man, they busted this out, and they were all like, one brought back their phone and turned on some music, and they started having a party with engineers. They blew his mind, and they were so pumped and they were so excited about it, and they were just got it like, yeah, okay, that's what we're about, man, and they were fired up for it, right? And that was just one piece of their strategy map. Then they continued on to create the rest of it, created some objectives, right? They're working right now on coming up with some metrics to say, hey, how do we move this needle? We're engineers, like, what are our numbers for us? And taking it to that next level. So that's the ROUS technique. Let's look at some other examples from other customers on creating that one-page strategy map that we referred to. And different personalities will come out of these. It cracks me up. So the one on the left is Department of Finance. Very serious, very grounded. Very important, solid, right? Department of Finance, no fooling, monochromatic, very simple, right? So they've got their mission. We serve as the governor's chief fiscal policy advisor, right? That's their customer, right? And their key why is long-term economic sustainability, right? So really nicely done. They've got their core values. That's the foundation, and their strategic goals are their pillars, right? And then they take it from there. This other one is from a K-8 charter school. It's a Waldorf school. So very, artistic and musical and integrated and holistic and kind of goofy, right? We got all those things all mixed up in there, right? And so very colorful, it's a tree, it's organic, right? More vibrant, that's the personality for that charter management organization. But again, we got our strategic goals, we've got our mission vision, our core values. A couple other ones, you can do this at the department level, you can do it at a division level, you can do it at a section level. So the department level one for Cal HR, their mission vision, their values at the bottom, their strategic goals, superior customer service right there at the top. They were really trying to, the thing they struggled with is changing their identity from a control agency, to a service agency, and really being like, hey, what are we doing? Rather than just being the cops and, just saying neener, 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 how do we get in front of this? How do we proactively provide valuable service? How do we help remove some of the impediments that folks are working with? And so that was kind of what was baked into their mission and vision to incorporate and signal that change internally. This other one is from Department of Developmental Services, and this is from their IT division. And so this is, again, a division as part of a larger organization. And so they've got their mission, vision, their goals, and then they also included the dynamic tools as a reference to say, hey, this is the stable elements, but we've got a whole a dashboard of other things that we're creating. And if Becky is here, I see you, Becky, all right? Are we working on those, Becky? Just say yes, please, make me look good. Okay, good. All right, so but we don't, those are dynamic tools, we're not putting those on the dashboard. And I love their mission and vision statement. So we did the ROUS method, right? We came up with something, and it was okay. We took it out of the employees, man, they just choked on it. They were just like, there it is. We wanted similar, we don't have this, that, and the other. And so we brought it back, we're like, okay, well, one of the versions we had toyed with was something that was really, really super simple. And so they're an IT shop. They said, together, we make it happen. Right, real simple, right? And the employees were all fired up. They're like, yeah, that's us, man, that's awesome. And it's kind of a, aggressive, kind of, plain and simple, just get her done type of organization. That fit the personality for that group. So pretty exciting for them. And then one last one from my friends at Healthcare Services with the CAMUS division. So this is also a division, but it's massive, and they're struggling with a lot of things. They've got 200 some odd employees, 1,200 contractors with the Medi-Cal vendors that are overseeing this, and so they've got theirs. And now they had this internal meme that was kind of around, hey, we're all in this boat together, right? We got a lot of challenges and change ahead, but we all got to be in the boat together. So on their strategy map, they incorporated this visual of a canoe team, rowing together in the same direction, and then that was their customer map. So just a couple of examples. One last one, this is also from OSHPED. So they had the overall department level strategy map. We're working with one of the divisions, and they had like 12 people. All right, 12 people on the Health Professional Education Foundation. They do scholarship and loan forgiveness programs to get more providers in the state, right? Their goals were the same as the department level ones, but then they created specific objectives that were relevant and specific and unique to them, and that's what's on their dashboard, that's what's on their project portfolio. And then again, of course, their customer map. So a couple of different examples from different organizations, and then the one that always gets everybody the most is when I share my personal family strategy map, because yes, I actually have one of these for my family. This is actually our 4th generation version. The first one I did, my kids were 6 and 8, started on a road trip to Mammoth, and we came up with our core values, and then we did the ROUS method around the table, which cracked me up, and my son was 8 at the time, and he wrote, to make the world a better place. That was what he wrote at the top, then he handed it to me, I looked at it, and I'm like, can't say I can make that any better. And that went all the way around, and everybody was like, that's our mission. All right, and we were done. That was the fastest ROUS I'd ever done. That was an 8-year-old wrote that. Now my wife and daughter, they were like, to do wonderful things with unicorns and rainbows and, transformational. It was like, 5 paragraphs long. And so we turned that into our vision and kind of consolidated that down. But we've got our ongoing family goals. Those don't change year to year, but every year we get together and we create individual personal objectives, right? And I've got metrics that I track on my dashboard. That's literally an app on my phone that looks at, am I getting to karate? Am I, getting enough sleep? Am I spending quality time with my wife? And that's great because it gives me that instant feedback to say, hey, am I moving in the right direction or not? It's also helpful when my wife starts complaining that I'm not spending enough quality time with her. I can then point to her, I say, well, actually, according to my data, it suggests that I'm averaging about 3.8, sessions per month, of good quality time with you. At which point she throws the firing plan. I mean, that's why I have the karate class as my other metric, so I can duck it, when she throws. So that's strategy, to me, it's a way of getting the best out of any organization. And the most important organization in my life is my family. And so if this is something that I know can make something better, of course, I'm going to do it with the people I care about the most. So that's kind of our personal. And then, of course, our services list is our chore checklist, right? Scooping kitty litter, cleaning dishes, right? That's all day, every day, every single time, every part of the season. And then our project portfolio, well, we call that the honeydew list. Right? That's the, clean the change this out in the backyard, build this, change this. Those are the changes that we're working on. So I'll wrap up here with a couple of the dynamic elements, and I just kind of took some generic versions of some of the tools that we've done with our clients to kind of illustrate what those might look like. But of course, those get to be really specific, unique to whatever your situation is. But this is an example of a service portfolio where we take what are the top 5 or 6 or so things that we do, again, from the customer's perspective, that's the service that delivers value to them. And it might slice across 5 organizational units. I don't care. By the way, leadership and management of your team in and of itself is a service, so make sure you're including that on your service portfolio, so you're investing and paying your team first on what they've got going on. Who's the customer for that service? That comes from your community map. Who is the steward that oversees that particular service? What are the service level agreements and the metrics associated with that at a service level that then, of course, tie into your performance dashboard at the top? Similarly for your project portfolio, many of you are very seasoned project professionals. You've got your PMPs. You're managing your individual projects. How am I as a manager keeping track of my portfolio of projects? And it's not just the big, hairy, scary IT ones. It's also our Lean Six Sigma process improvements. It's also our mentoring programs. Anytime you're trying to do something that changes the way your team operates, that's a project. And I got to have a lead for that. I got to have a sponsor for that. I got to have a little plan for that and a timeline for that. Otherwise, those things will get perpetually delayed, right? And so those two lists, my service portfolio and my project portfolio, is what I'm using to kind of juggle my day-to-day workflow as I'm trying to negotiate on behalf of or advocate on behalf of my team. A little bit about prioritize. So that's the P in VOPAR. The reality is you're always prioritizing. People say, well, what we got to do around here is prioritize. And the fact is you already are. The question is, how are you doing it? So some of the common traditional methods of prioritizing, we've got FIFO. That stands for first in, first out, which is operating on the model of, first come is fair. And that's great if you're at DMV, not so great if you're at an emergency room, right? And so just, hey, whatever the first email of the day is, that's what I work on until I'm done, right? Just because I started it, that's what I got to finish. Another option is last in, first out. This is whatever the latest and greatest is, that's what I focus on, right? And so, somebody asks for permission to start something, you say yes, and then they get going, and somebody else asks something, you say yes. So you're saying yes to everything, which creates this layering effect that, lots of new things are getting started, right, but you don't get to finish really anything. And so that's the LIFO method. These other two methods depend, if you're not making the decisions on priorities, one of these other two groups are. And if it's external to you, you have a WSTL situation, which is whoever screamed the loudest. All right, this is the squeaky wheel, right? If you're not prioritizing, and somebody else will get up in your face and scream at you loud enough to help you prioritize accordingly, right? That may or may not be strategically aligned. And then if they're not doing it, and you're just like, they're all number one. Some people try to cheat and like, well, no, they're all number one. They all got to get done. They all got to be equal equality. They're equal this. They're all equal. Well, then the employees will decide how they spend their time, and that decision will be based on whatever seems the easiest, right? So whatever they can win at, whatever they're successful at, whatever they're the most useful and comfortable with, that's where they're going to put more of their effort just naturally, right? And that will end up getting more attention, and that one will move farther along than other things. What we're recommending is basically doing it based on return on investment. And that's not just a financial calculation, that's saying what is the value to the customer, right, based on the level of effort involved, right? And if I've got 6 different things I could be working on, right, which one of these is going to add relatively a little bit more value? Which one of these might be a predecessor to be able to get to something else? And I'm making those priority calls on a relative basis, not an absolute basis, and putting them in a forced rank order, 1, 2, 3, 4 to N. Right? And if anybody wants to add anything to the list, we can add it at any time. Hey, would you like to do that? Yes, I'll add it to the list. How would you like me to prioritize this? Would you like me to put it in front of him, or do you want to put it in front of her? Where roughly would you like to put this? Right? And then that gives us leverage in that conversation to be able to then say, okay, if that's the priority then this is how I'm going to organize my resources and allocate them accordingly to give you the best value possible. Well, but I want you to do all of them. Well, I could do all of them equally, but then here's how it's going to affect the performance dashboard, and here's how the customers will suffer. I don't think you'll get the best net value. If we organize it like this and we concentrate on these 3 key elements now, yeah, we're going to suffer here, but on the whole, long term, we're going to be in a better, more sustainable, more defensible, more whatever position it is that we need to be. There's still politics involved, of course, that doesn't go away, but then we now have a way of being able to negotiate through those politics based on data and based on trade-offs versus just me saying, I can't do it all. Because everybody says that, and of course nobody listens to that because everybody's saying it. And then lastly, revise. And so you're sorting all of this out and you're prioritizing all of this so that you can achieve the best result. So you got to have some data that supports you and be able to come up with what is that result. And you're probably not going to be right the first time you do this, right? Where it's a constant learning and evolutionary process. So here's a classic kind of dashboard on this one. The top 2 elements, those are kind of like the drivers. This is the volume of claims and the number of customers that are coming into this particular organization. This is based on a dashboard we did for EDD. But then we're looking at, okay, what's our average days of turnaround time? What is the percentage of claims that were paid in a timely fashion? What percentage of them were filed online versus on paper, and so on and so forth? What's our budget variance? What's our level of employee engagement? And then we can be able to see, hey, we're setting a target for this. And we're moving purposely towards that target. And then I've got my little trend line that lets me know, hey, are we moving in the right direction, at the right ratio? And then I can just say, hey, I'd like to make a change. I'd like to change how we're allocating our resources. I'd like to see more on this, less on that. I'd like to see a new project that launches because, hey, we're kind of getting diminishing returns. Let's revisit and see what we can do to double down and find a better way of being able to address this other problem. All right, this gives me my support. And the key is keep it stupid simple. And I say that because it's not nice to call people stupid, so don't say keep it simple stupid, right? But keep it stupid simple, right? Because you try to make this too elaborate and too complex, right? You'll never get it done. And you want to balance the type of metrics that you have, right? It might be easier to measure the inputs, and if that's what you got, that's what you got. So go for it. Maybe you measure the activities, maybe you measure the outputs. Yeah, I'd love to measure the outcomes, but sometimes that data is a little harder, more expensive to get. So come up with a combination that looks at, hey, balances, the accessibility and the leadingness of the data, versus how cool and sophisticated it is, so that I've got a sense of, hey, I can't be, just because my weight's going down, and just because I'm spending more time with my wife, and just because I'm getting to karate 2 times a week, and just because I'm sleeping more, does not guarantee that I'm going to live a long and fruitful and prosperous life. Doesn't guarantee it. But I know for myself, for my metrics, if I'm doing those things, my odds of having a long and fulfilling life have been increased. Right? And I know if I'm not doing those things, I know my odds of a long and fulfilling life are significantly decreased. Right? So metrics aren't there to guarantee or prove causality. They're there to give you feedback to say, okay, if these things are lining up, chances are we're moving in the right direction. And the key thing is just to start doing it, like everything else in life, right? If you're waiting until you know how to do all this stuff, if you're waiting until it's perfect, you'll never get it done. So let me close with the biggest excuse that you have in your minds right now, and then I'll share with you our free giveaway and we'll get out of here. What's the biggest impediment? What stops most organizations, what stops most leaders from actually being more strategic? What do you guys think it is? That's just it right there. They don't have time. And I'm going to jump right to that one because you nailed it. It's not because this stuff is a bad idea. Like, I think this is, being strategic, that's dumb. Nobody says that. Some people think, well, it will be resisted. Well, of course it'll be resisted. I know that for a fact. How can you be afraid of something that you know for certain is going to happen, right? So you just got to accept it. Of course it's going to be resisted. Some people think it's not a lack of skill. Well, that's why you're here, right? Learn something. But the best way you learn is by doing. So get doing. But it is because, well, I don't have time to be strategic. I'm too busy pulling the weeds out of the garden. I don't have time to grab the rake or the hoe. Right? And it's like, wait a second, like if we use these tools and we start investing the time now, all right, that's when you will get smarter, that's when you get stronger, and that's when you'll be better able to navigate it. So for those of us who think we don't have the time, it goes back to the very same principle for every successful model in the world. You got to pay yourself first. We all have 24 hours a day. We all get the same allocation except on the weird time frame changes days. Then you get that 25 day and the 23 day. Man, I was screwed one day. I was on a deadline. I was like, I got 24 hours. Like, wait a minute, this is fallback. What do you mean I'm losing an hour today? I have to have that hour. So you get to spend it however you choose, and it's multiplied by your network, right? If you've got allies and friends in other departments that are doing this, that helps you get there. Leaders invest it wisely, both for today and tomorrow. All right, so choose to spend that for the future, because this graph ain't going to change. There's always going to be more being asked of you than you got time and money to do it. So as Theodore Roosevelt said, do what you can with what you have from where you are. All right. Be purposeful, be passionate. That's how we get ourselves out of this, because the strategy is not going to be perfect. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to get hit by things, right? But the fact of the matter is those mistakes are going to get less and less and less. But if you don't have a strategy and you aren't being intentional about how you're allocating your resources, and you don't have a measure that explains why you're doing that you can use to negotiate, then that's what your team looks like without it. Right? It is total mayhem and total chaos, right? And so, yeah, we're going to get bumped and bruised, but we'll get better, faster over time. So the free takeaway we have for you today, if you haven't already, swing on by our booth and sign up for our mailing list. We're offering a free download of the 5 levels of strategic thinking. It includes a one-page coaching guide to kind of self-assess either yourself or maybe a supervisor that you're trying to help develop and improve their strategic thinking. It includes the key coaching questions to allow somebody to kind of progress from that complete clueless victim, why is this happening to me, to that more strategic and effective operator. So with that, I thank you guys very much for your time. I'm happy to stick around for some questions about how this might be relevant or supportive to your organization. And I want to thank all of you who are clients of mine who have allowed me to share some of your stories with other folks, and so that they can learn from your experience as well. Thank you very much.